I'm very pleased tonight to welcome the Swiss ambassador André Schaller, who will introduce Ugo Rondinone. Mr. Schaller has had many impressive titles and had many different appointments over the years, such as the deputy head of mission in the Swiss embassy in Lagos, the head of the economic division at the Swiss embassy in Berlin, the ambassador extraordinaire in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and he was appointed the Consul General of Switzerland in New York in 1914. So it's my great pleasure to... Did I say 19? I don't think he was alive. Or he has some magic because he looks really good. So in 2014, we're so pleased to have you here. It's really, no, I'm glad you said something. People would have wondered, and everybody would have asked you about your secret. So here is Mr. Andreas Schaller.
Thank you very much, Raphaela. Well, good evening, bonsoir, grüezi, buonasera. It's my pleasure to introduce to you my fellow Swiss citizen, Ugo Rondinone, here in the renowned Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati, in the heartland of America. Ugo grew up in the heartland of Switzerland, in central Switzerland. Then, Ugo, you moved to Zurich as a young adult to work with Austrian artist Hermann Nitsch, and later you studied at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. You moved to New York City in 1998, where you had lived and worked ever since. Ugo has exhibited his works in all cultural capitals of the world on nearly every continent. And I'm proud that Ugo Rondinone is an outstanding example of how Swiss creative artists, talents contribute to the international art scene, and they do this working together with the best partners like the Contemporary Art Center here in Cincinnati. And with this you show also that Switzerland is not only about cheese and chocolate, but also about innovation and creativity. Dear guest, it's hard to put Ugo's art into words, because his art is much stronger than my words, certainly my words as a diplomat, because you'll see, once you put on those booties and you walk into this wonderland, into this many brilliant colors with the clowns, you will be amazed in all your senses. Because it's not what you think it is. Let yourself be surprised. Your art, Ugo, it goes not only to the mind, it goes to our feelings, to our hearts. You give us great experiences. Now, as it is very hard to put into words, let me share something personal with you. I see Ugo every day. Can I have the slide, please?
We have to go back. Yes.
Yes. Your painting, 7. August 1900, hangs in the staircase of the Swiss consulate, the staircase which links us with the Swiss mission to the United Nations. And together with my team members, here we see the picture from the International Women's Day, which we were celebrating. We walk up and down, and every time we do this, we have a moment of reflection, of mediation. And you inspire us with this beautiful sun to think out of the box and to leave offbeat paths. Thank you so much for this. That's what we feel in our consulate and in the mission. Now, let me also thank the director and curator, Raphaela Platow, and her team, her wonder makers, at the Contemporary Art Center for making this wonderful exhibition possible. My thanks go to all sponsors, including the Swiss Arts Council Pro Helvetia, for their generous support. And, of course, to Ugo Rondinone for this magnificent, truly inspiring show. So I'm looking forward to a thrilling discussion. Thank you very much.
So I have the great pleasure to be in conversation with Ugo for about 45 minutes, and we will walk you more or less through the exhibition and share thoughts about the different bodies of work that are part of Let's Start This Day Again. There are about 9 bodies of work that make up this exhibition that Ugo has been working on ever since the early 90s. And then we will open up the discussion to all of you so that you can ask questions before we all go upstairs. So the oldest piece in the exhibition is from 1998. It's a sun painting, and you started creating these works in 1992. Could you talk a little bit about how they came about? What was in your mind?
Yeah, so those are, when I started them, I called them date paintings, because the title of each of those paintings is a date. So it was like a diaristic note. And the year before I did the sun paintings, I did landscapes. And those landscapes paintings were made in a way like the Goethe's Wanderzeichnungen, like turn of the century drawings. But
Did you actually draw them while you were hiking?
I started them in '89 out of a decision to leave the studio and making a life out of art. I mean, this is one of the forces of the art, I believe, that you're with and by yourself.
Where were you at the time?
I was studying in Vienna. I was in my last year. So this became a graduation work, those landscapes. They were very much in the romantic style of landscapes, and end of the 80s you were not very fashionable doing landscapes.
That's true. Not very conceptual.
And so that's when I started those landscapes, and since then every painting group has as a title a date. And what you see is always a space that you can get yourself in. So the landscape were wall sizes, so you could just walk in. And the second group were those sun paintings that have the same effect, that you can that you are absorbed into it. And within those 2 years, a dialogue started between duality that forms the work. Unfortunately, we don't have now a landscape painting, maybe that's missing, but you could see the difference between those nostalgic landscapes and this modernistic called target paintings. For me, it's the sun, because you cannot focus the painting. And what binds them together is this diaristic note of a date, so it makes a mark of my day, and the way it has been prepared. The landscape drawing I made outside on small sheets, and then in the studio I would enlarge them. Same goes for the sun paintings. I would do automatic watercolors, and they make a choice, and then enlarge them and spray paint them.
So to go back to that duality, when you created the watercolors that are the basis for these works, was that a more internal discovery, like what was going on emotionally for you that day? Because the drawings of nature were so much about the outside world, Are the sun paintings more about your internal space?
I mean,
Would you say
in
that?
both works, it was an activity where I don't have to think. This was the main purpose, something that
You just
doesn't
do.
need
You sketch quickly
any
outside and you
thinking.
create
And
these.
to those days, I believe you don't have to think when you go into an exhibition. You just let it happen to you.
Yeah, you feel
So
it.
you have to feel it. I always say you don't have to understand art, you have just to feel it. As soon as you expose yourself to it, something comes out of it.
So I want to illustrate the diaristic quality of these sun paintings to you. Ever since 2092, Ugo has created about 202. So I'm just showing a few samples here that he's created over the years. They all have different colors and they all have a really mesmerizing effect on the eye. They're very blurry, they absorb you into their space. They almost open up to a third dimension. So after or together with, what's interesting about Ugo's work is that he often works in parallel. These different bodies all happen in parallel to each other. So Love Invents Us, I think for the first time you did it in 1992, or 1999. In 1999, where you covered the windows of existing architecture with these differently colored gels. And I think this is again about sort of creating a boundary or emphasizing the difference between the inside and the outside and emphasizing what you see on the outside.
Yeah, I have to go back to when I installed the landscapes, the outside world would be shut out with wooden blanks. If
So
there
you
was
closed
a
up the
window, I
windows.
would close the windows. The same I would do with the sun paintings. And the third exhibition that we're gonna see later, I opened this window and became a screen. And the screen would be altered by those colored filters, so it was an alternation of reality. So still not facing reality and creating my own.
Your own inner world. So this is here an image of our skylight that you might not experience tonight because it's probably too dark outside, but come back, especially when the sun is out, because it's just an amazing color explosion on our concrete wall. Like it almost like functions like a sundial. The colors just move across the wall over the course of the day, and of course you see the clouds and everything outside tinted in these beautiful colors. I think this is maybe also a good point to start talking or introducing the idea and the notion of the color spectrum, because there are certain colors that people will get to experience in the exhibition that you've used over and over and over again. Is that right?
Yeah, I go back again to the landscape. The landscapes were black and white.
Black and white, right.
So the next group was very colorful. And this is how, in that dynamic, my work builds up. So it needs this kind of duality. For once, not to create values and to keep an open mind. Like once you have a set of rules and you keep on those rules, then you just blind yourself for any other rules that could be a help.
And you like coming up with rules for yourself and parameters.
As a Swiss artist.
But within the system, there's always a little alteration. I think you create a system and then you're also very comfortable leaving it behind and creating a new one.
Right. I mean, they help me also to a set of rules helps in many ways. And we're going to see it later. I did groups that relate to the days of the week.
Sure.
We're going to talk later.
We're going to talk about that later. So maybe we can go from this incredible new perspective that you offer to all of us looking outside, but at the same time creating an inner world. You created windows that don't allow anybody to see outside, where you literally exchange the window pane with plexiglass that you can't look through. So whenever you look at this work as a viewer, you only see yourself. This piece here is called The Nowhere. Could you talk a little bit about this notion of maybe emptiness or nowhere that go through your work?
The window as a symbol is a worldwide symbol of aspiration and seeing a future, looking out, and generated the first time as a metaphor in the Romantic movement, in the German Romantic movement. And I still think that is a very valuable movement because it introduced for the first time the notion of dreams and irrationality and fantasy.
Right. And they elevated those feelings.
Yeah. So all those symbols that I use, they're well recognized and they come directly from this Romantic movement.
So this is the first window that you ever created? Was an installation from '97 called Everyday Sunshine?
Right.
And you created literally everyday sunshine
And
for the visitors of this
so in front
exhibition.
of, this was in a gallery in Rome, in front of the existing real window, I would build my stage window with this alternating view that would just change the perception of the view to Rome. And this was the first window I created. What you see here in the black dots are speakers, and the looped song would proclaim everyday sunshine.
This is another installation from 2008, Clockwork for Oracles.
It's mirrored shells, 52 different colors. It's 2 layers. The first layer is the newspaper of the city where I would install this work. It had since 2007 several different sites where I installed it. 52, coming back to the system, representing the 52 weeks of the year. The newspaper would be whitewashed, and then you would have this formation of 52 windows.
So here is an installation of the 45 clowns that we have in the galleries right now. And as you can see, and as Mr. Schaller mentioned earlier, they're all very contemplative. They're all situated on the floor. They are very passive. They all seem to be inward oriented. And I think the work is related to the window because the window, your window, just shifts the gaze back to the person who is trying to look through. And your clowns are, in a very similar way, just involved with themselves. So this is a little bit of a jump that I'm making, but this is...
Go back to the
clowns first.
The clowns first, yeah. So after the colored rainbow spectrum of the windows, so this color spectrum is for me, it's a system of like of a wholeness, of a holistic system that includes everything. That's where the rainbow comes in.
Right.
And I would do this vocabulary Solitude under this premise of the rainbow colors. I casted 45 different people, 23 female and 22 male.
And they're actual body scans of models.
Body scans of models. And the hands, feet, and faces were cast directly from the person. So they are wearing their own faces as a mask in this contemplative setting. And we will see with the next picture where it all started. That's my first exhibition in Zurich. And what you would see is 3 layers, if you go back. So you have a studio floor, or what people would maybe think of a studio floor. You have myself as a window figure, and then you have it looks almost like a movie screen, a window accelerated with this brown framing, looking out. And this would indicate an attitude of the work, of passivity. And passivity has, for me, several meanings, but the most important one is that it's a sort of a protection. So once you are in an activity, you reveal something, you are for something or against something, and being passive keeps you just open. So it's people would associate it with melancholy, but I never evaluated that. It was just an openness in that passivity.
And since this is a self-portrait, the state of passivity must be very important for you as an artist. Do you feel like that is the state that allows you to do the work that you're doing?
Or it's as I said, it's a way to protect yourself. I mean, once you're in the artwork, you have to distinguish between what you will give, because it's all about your person, what you create, and what kind of measurement you give. Going back to the landscape and to the sun paintings, so when I would prepare them in situ, the landscapes, they're small, or the watercolor, so they would never find their way into the art market. And so that's a kind of a self-protection, that you may deal with your soul, but you don't give your soul away. And that goes the same with this performance sculpture. I would call it performance sculpture. So it's a substitute of myself, but without being there myself.
So in 2000, you created the first clown sculptures, and I see them very much as a metaphor for the artist, him or herself, but you chose to put them in the vestment of a clown.
In 2000, I made 8 clowns. The first I called Zero, and then the sequence of the 7 authors.
Yeah, all of them.
I would call them after the weekday. So this was more or less my attitude, how to spend the week, doing nothing, and to create no expectation, of course, as an artist. Again, as kind of self protection. And the clown suited me as a substitute for the artist because he's in the entertaining business. And in this case, he refuses to entertain.
Right. So.
And when I made them, as you see, they have all bellies. My first boyfriend had a belly. Maybe it came from them, but in the same time, it was also it was related also to a certain groundness, something that pulls you down with weight, and a certain satisfaction. People would always touch the belly when in exhibition for various reasons. Good luck.
Rub the belly.
And as you see, the bellies are quite firm. There's a story behind. There was a web page called bellybuilders.com. And those were men who would like to drink beer, but in the same time they would train their belly so it would stand out. Because I tried to cast a heavy man, and the belly was not hold up with muscles. So it was not really, it was just flipping always on the side. So that's when
So you found somebody who did some bodybuilding.
And exactly. Yeah. And another story about the system, because that's maybe a good situation to talk about system. It gives me also a notion when to stop a group. With the targets or with the sun paintings and the landscape, they are meant to be done ongoing, forever, right? Because they have a diaristic note with the date. With all the other artworks, I need a kind of restriction. So I don't have to think about, oh, do I need now a 9th clown because a client comes in and wants a clown. I can just say, no, there are 8.
There are only 8.
Because
one was 7 days of the week and 1 mistake.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the number 0. So let's go back
because I couldn't count of 7, of course. And then I realized later I did 8. Or because I didn't do them all in the same time. It took 3 years. So.
So let's go back to vocabulary of solitude for a second. Every clown
So
has
14 years later, I do
Mhm.
vocabulary of solitude.
Mhm.
And vocabulary of solitude is like the 7 weeks of the week, a loop in itself of 24 hours of a single man or woman who spends the life by itself without interacting. And I made a list, what do I do when I'm by myself? And I came up with 45 action, and each of those 45 is one of those action. And it loops from be, breathe, sleep, dream, wake, rise, sit, hear, look, think, stand, walk, pee, shower, until he gets undressed, lies, and is in bed again.
And
So
then
it's
it
a
starts all over again.
continuous loop. Yeah.
So from the clowns, we go to the clown shoes. These clown shoes you created when you did the first 7 clowns. And you also created 7 clown shoes because the clowns put up their shoes on the wall and decided not to perform anymore, to just sit and be quiet.
Right. So the 7 clowns were in 2000. They came later in 2006. If you see the clowns before, they don't wear shoes. Shoe is a sign of moving and going. So
Right.
they are barefoot, and it was just a given to do also 7 pair of shoes and hang them on the nail.
So another body of work that we have in the exhibition are the light bulbs. The light bulbs are also related to the hours of the day, of one day. So there's one light bulb for every hour of the day, and they are all called, like the first hour of the poem, the second hour of the poem to the 24th hour of the poem. Could you talk a little bit about how they are made and what they are made from, and
So
how they are installed?
As you see, they are made out of wax, and you see there is a lot of traces. My hands, I made them out of clay, and then they were cast always in these Trinity colors out of wax. Again, a system of 24 hours, and I called them the first hour of the poem, and so on. And poetry became a topic, and I see some relation between art and poetry, especially in their slowness
And in their open-endedness as well.
and in their irrationality. So language in poetry is never logic, as art is not logic as well.
And so when these light bulbs are very large, as you will see, they are
quite large, and they hang always very low on. I needed a certain measurement, and it's just on my belly.
So since they are made of wax, but light bulbs, they connote this idea of melting, that the light bulb inside the heat sort of consumes itself and melts away. And it's on the height of your belly button. So to me, they are almost like a symbol for the cycle of life, from birth to death. With the wax melting, I don't know if I'm getting too heavy here,
but
but
it's all right. I'm open for every value, so you can whatever you like. But of course, it's all of passing time. As you see, those figures, they linger and they have time to kill.
Right.
And passing time. It's
Same thing.
Same thing.
So you have created quite a few still lives. We have 21 of these beautiful candles in the exhibition. They are actual casts from real
From
candles.
Actual candles, yeah.
So they are very small and very delicate. They are all painted in different oil paint. And the hollow sculpture, the bronze sculpture, is filled with lead. So if you were to pick them up, please don't do it. Just imagine they're very, very heavy. What is the reason behind making them so heavy?
For once, for me it was a sign of freezing time or holding time and pulling down reality. They are called still lives, and it's almost in the sense of the word still
Still and
life.
life.
and I would cast different ordinary objects. So the work goes always between the very ordinary and the extraordinary,
So you've
or the
cast.
spiritual.
You've cast. I think most of the still lifes are ordinary objects. You've cast apples and stones and other.
Or my
pieces of
or some furniture that I live with, just my surroundings.
I would love to know a little bit more about these colors that you've chosen. The title for all of these candles is Still Life, and then the particular color that they've been painted with. So this one was painted with mint green. What's the reasoning behind the color choices?
Give me just a variation of the color. So it's not really an idea behind, just to multiply those candles and make them unique.
Okay. So I wanted to tie it back to the 1 through 24th hour of the poem, because poetry is really important in your life. You read a lot of poetry, and you've also written poems yourself. You've actually also created vast bodies of works early on. You call them drawings, but they involve a lot of prose, a lot of text, personal stories. And then in 2003, you created this beautiful body of work called Lines Out to Silence. And it's 30 poems, and they're all on different sheets of paper, and some of them include a little drawing. Speak a little bit more about your own poetry and how it relates to the other works.
I wouldn't call myself a poet. My husband is a poet, so there must be some influence.
Yeah.
And those are just one-liners. So very simple, very childlike.
I find them very powerful poems.
And there's the power of the word, of course, and the imagination that the word can send out, but they are naive and understood, or you can feel something.
Yeah, there's one upstairs, I almost started crying. They're very, very powerful poems. Was there, where did you create them?
I had a scholarship in Vienna in 2003, and no studio. That's when I did those drawings.
Started doing poems. So you've always been intrigued with poems and sayings and certain titles of pop music. And you've also been intrigued for a long time with the rainbow as a symbol, as a sign. So you started creating these beautiful, beautiful neon signs that are quite large, and they are often installed on top of art institutions around the world. And they have these beautiful sayings, just as, the title of our exhibition, Let's Start This Day Again. This is in production. It will be somewhere installed, hopefully soon.
So the previous one, Crimea River, was my first public sculpture.
In 97?
In 97, I had an occasion to do a public sculpture, and I thought, doing public sculpture is different because you have the world looking at.
Sure.
So I wanted to use a symbol that it's universal understood.
Yeah.
So I came up with the rainbow sign, with the idea that every major city would have one of those spellings.
We need one in Cincinnati. We are a major city of the Midwest, right? Of the heartland.
And so it would just build a net of poetry around the globe. And they mostly come from exhibition titles. So I would sometimes, if they are short enough, those titles, I would make a neon out of it.
Right.
And to these days, I made the last one that it's in production. That's the
24th?
21.
21st.
Yeah.
So you've also painted rainbows and probably drawn rainbows. And we have 5,000 rainbow drawings in the exhibition. They were all created by children. And you personally invited them to participate in this exhibition.
Right.
So this is one example that happened in 2016 in Rome. And this is our wall that you get to experience on the 5th floor. So we were able, our remarkable education department was able to work with 30 schools and 6 libraries. And we got over 5,000 drawings of rainbows for this exhibition, and we have a big family opening tomorrow. But talk a little bit about why the work of children was important to you, and this very immediate expression of putting the rainbow on a piece of paper.
It came with the vocabulary of solitude, that it's a portrait of a middle-aged person, so I needed a certain kind of duality, something young and fresh and hopeful. So I asked, because this exhibition here in Cincinnati is a part of a 5-station serial exhibition that combines in every station different bodies of spectrum works, but always with the 45 clowns as the heart.
Centerpiece, yeah.
So I always asked, it started in Rotterdam, went on to Rome, and that's the 3rd station, and the last station will be the Bass Museum in Miami, where all the drawings will come together of those different cities, and you will see there is no difference between a child imagination of a rainbow and someone from Cincinnati.
Anywhere in the world. It's wonderful. So we'll open it up to all of you. Maybe we can get some light, and then I think we have a handheld microphone that we'll pass around so that we can all hear each other. Do we have a first question? Somebody who has a loud voice, maybe. So we don't need a microphone. Oh, I think it's here. Here's the microphone. So any questions?
I don't have it.
Here. Oh. Why don't we start here and then we go to Ken?
So the rainbows came from children ages 2 to 12. Why did you stop there?
4 to...
Or 4 to...
2 years or as well?
I think we might have some young children in there. I'm not quite sure, but I think the
top age was 12?
12.
Yeah.
So we said children under 12.
I mean, this is just my guess that they are not really formed yet, and they have a really open mind. Then.
Right. I thought if I had to draw a rainbow, I would look for my compass and see if I could make it perfect and the colors would be right in order. Yeah. So I
wanted something innocent. So.
Great, thank you. So we had a question here. Microphone is on its way.
You worked with Nietzsche, and how old were you when you did that, and in what capacity?
So maybe we should quickly say that.
I was with an assistant of Nietzsche, but in Burgendorf in Vienna, not in Zurich, and I was 19, and I worked for him only a half year.
So Hermann Nietzsche is a renowned performance artist, part of the Viennese secession?
No, Viennese Actionism.
Actionism.
There were 4 artists, Schwarzkogler, Nietzsche, and 2 others, Bruce and Müll, and they were known for their ritual approach of performance. And Nietzsche had a special performance series that he was working on called the Orgy Mysterious Theater, and as a 19-year-old it was something special to be part of it. There was no orgies, but it was titled.
So you only made it 6 months?
I made it 6 months.
And then you had to move on.
But this was the occasion to stay in Vienna, and then I started studying there.
Other questions?
I don't know if it's a question so much as an impression of the whole thing. The use of color it allows you to see something for the first time again. It gives a new innocence to the space upstairs, and it feels like that's kind of a recurring and underlying theme of the work. Is that something that you're looking for to allow us to see things for the first time again?
I mean, what is blinded out here now, it's the whole other world that I'm doing. It's really black and white and natural color, and this is just an exaggeration of the other side. And when I came here, maybe 1.5 years ago, a year ago, visit this first time.
I think it was 2 years ago.
It was
for the
2
first
years
time,
ago.
yeah.
I was very impressed about the building, but I found it very artist unfriendly. I was impressed about the monument of this architecture, but I found it insulting for an artist to not insulting, but hard to digest. Why would she do that to me? Why would she put those strange angles? There is no way I can. That's not the way I work. That's not the way my studio looks like. That's not the way I use. I believe every artist, what he wishes is a white box.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, before it controls me, I will control it. So that's when I came up to have every surface with another color, and I hope she would be pleased to see it.
So what you get to experience is about 600 gallons of paint later, and hundreds of rolls of flooring, and it is a remarkable experience, and it really allows you to see the architecture new again. Like I now see forms and lines in the architecture that I've never seen before. So thank you for letting us see the building through your eyes, through your work. There was another question, I think, right there.
What about the people that hate clowns?
Try it anyway. See if you can make a friend. Ours are really lovely.
I think you have a good answer because the clowns are not performing. They're in contemplation.
They're in contemplation.
And they're
but
not in act. And aren't they cast from people you know?
an extended family, but friends of friends. I live in Harlem, so they were cast there.
So they're real people.
They're real
that you've
people.
cast from.
And I made a point of it that it's equally in the ethnics, so
Okay.
it's something.
Because I have
that
to tour
includes
this,
everyone.
and I have people that are terrified of clowns.
I never understood this phobia, but
I'm just dealing with the
I have to say I
future.
come from a small town called Brunnen in Switzerland, and the main event of this town of 6,000 people were the circus coming to
Same
town,
here.
and the clown was of course a major figure of it.
So I invite you to look very, very carefully at the faces of the clowns, because they're beautiful and delicate, and they show many, many different racial features. They're feminine clowns and male clowns, and so don't forget to look carefully. So maybe we take one more question, please. Now we have two last questions, and then we'll wrap up.
As a young artist, obviously, I'm interested in the young artist's journey. In fact, my 5-year-old sister has one of the rainbows in the gallery. To her and I, is there any advice that you could give to aspiring artists?
Keep an open mind, and I hope you are lucky, because talent is really a small part of it, and the right circumstances will create it. And that's also an occasion to thank those 5,000 children from Cincinnati, creating probably the largest rainbow that is around in America.
It's true.
Tomorrow there will be a special opening for children here.
At 1 o'clock, from 1 to 3. So come back and see all the children. So I think maybe this is a good way to end.
And of course you have to see a lot of art to become a good artist.
Yes.
Because what feeds you, that's what makes your creation. I haven't invented zero. It's all about observation, other art, and walking the streets.
So thank you so much. Put on your booties, and we see you on the 4th floor.
Thank you.
Oppose me, we oppose the entire way. And then we love to, feel that boy too, and we feel most every day. Would you tell me that you love me? Would you feel that we are okay? And then we'll argue, feel it break up, but it's really all in vain. We are never so dumb. We are enough.